All right, so I'm going to go ahead and give this review as a lecture review. So I'll go ahead and just work through this. You'll have the answers and you'll see how I get them. Remember, your test is a week from today. It's going to be in Canvas. And I'm going to open it at 6:30. You're going to go into Canvas and just open the test and do the problems. A couple of those, I'm going to ask you to upload a file. So I'll have more instructions on that in the next couple of days. But for right now, your test will be pretty similar to this review. So let's see how it goes. So this is basically a chapter 5 question right here. And you're given some info and then asked to knock out some probabilities. Okay, research that students, grade 4 through 6. What's most important to them? And it's based on where they live, rural, suburban, urban, and what's most important to them in school, grades, being popular, or sports. And it's important to be able to realize we got a total of 478 students, okay? So find the probability that if one student is chosen at random, they were a rural student. So let's see. That's just a basic probability question. That means there are how many rural students? 149 out of 478. Okay, we could get that as a decimal. That'd be nice, but I'm going to go ahead and leave those as fractions. Who said sports? Well, 90 out of 478. Easy. 90 out of 478. Chose sports, given that he or she was rural. Okay, when it says given, I am reducing my entire set to those 149 rural students. Given that they were rural, 149 is my denominator, which makes my numerator, they're asking about sports, 42. Okay. Was rural, given that they chose sports. So if I says given that they chose sports, that is these 90 students. We've reduced our set to 90. And the rural were the 42. Same numerator for that one. That's the last one. Rural or urban. So that's going to be my 149. Those are my rural students. Urban, 178. And add those two probabilities together. And that's out of the total. 478. That's a 7. And then remember, we should be thinking about at least subtracting the intersection. But these are mutually exclusive. There's no overlap here. So it's just, there's nothing to subtract. All right, remember, we only subtract when there's some kind of overlap or where these two things can happen at the same time, being both rural and urban, which is impossible for this example. And remember, or means plus. So if I add those two guys together, 149 and 178, I'll use my calculator to make sure I get it right. 149 plus 178 is 327. So that's 327 out of 478. Remember, when you add fractions, common denominator, and then just add the numerators. So here I'll circle all my answers. Those are my answers so far. Okay, F. Chose grades or was suburban. Chose grades and suburban. Okay, so for F, chose grades or was suburban. So who picked grades? 247 chose grades. And then suburban was 151. But then we have to subtract, and this is the case where we subtract the intersection. So to subtract the intersection, it was the people who chose grades and were suburban. So grades and suburban. So I got to subtract those guys off. Okay, so subtract the 87 minus 87. And this one, I'll just put that all over 478. So that's the answer. If I do the math, 247 plus 151 minus 87 gives me 311. 311 out of 478. Equals 311 out of 478. That is my answer to F. Okay, now I gotta be careful this next one. Chose grades and was suburban. So this and doesn't mean multiply. Sometimes and means multiply. In this case, it's just the intersection of two sets. The students who chose grades is most important, and the suburban students. That's actually this 87 students right here. So the answer is simply 87 out of 478. Remember, all these are out of 478 unless I say given that, right? Given that reduces my sample set. Okay, let's see. So now this is a different kind of question. We're picking 3 students, right? So this is 3 different probabilities, and most likely they're going to be multiplied together with replacement. So we're putting them back in the group. Okay, so all 3 are urban. So urban were 178 out of 478. So 178 out of 478. All right, that's probably that if I choose one at random, I get an urban student. And then I put that guy back. And then what's the probability that I get another urban student? Well, it's the same because we put him back, and it would be the same again. Of course, we could just raise that to the 3rd power. So these ones I definitely want as decimals, and on the test I'll take either answer, a fraction or a decimal, but this one you don't want to even bother with a fraction. So I'm going to divide 178 divided by 478. I'm going to raise that to the 3rd power. And I get 0.0516. I'm going to ask you to round to 2 decimal places, 0.0516. So how do I type that into the computer? 0.05 if it's 2 decimal places. I won't be too picky, but it will be the way that the computer works is I put the right answer in there. So if you were to if I said rounded 2 decimal places, I'll put a answer in that it should be 0.05. If you put 0.052, it'll mark you wrong. But I'll look at all of them, and I won't be real picky about rounding. I'll still give you credit, but just try and follow so you can see you got the right answer right away. None of the 3 were urban. Okay, so that means they had to be the other 2. They had to be either these guys or these guys. Okay, so that means they had to be, it's the complement, right? So there's a couple ways that you can just add 151 to 178, which is the same thing you get if you say 478 minus 149. None of the 3 are urban. Oh, did I look at the wrong? None of the 3. That's these 2 together. Sorry. That should be what, 300 people. None of them are urban. Means they're either rural or suburban. So that's 300. The probability that the first one is not urban would be 300 out of 478, and then we're going to raise that to the 3rd power. That should give me 2 to the power of 3, I get 0.247 equals 0.247, which I'll round to 0.25. All right, our favorite question, at least, well, let's do G, because G's the same question. They all say sports, so that's sports with replacement. It's 90 out of 478 to the 3rd. So 90 divided by 478 raised to the 3rd. Whoops, try that again. 90 divided by 478 raised to the 3rd power. I get 0.00667 equals 0.00667, and I'd have to rethink my 2 decimal, well, maybe not. If I say 2 decimal places, maybe on the test I'll make it 3, but in terms of 2 decimal places, that's how I would round it, 0.01. Okay, now, this one, the at least 1. Okay, at least 1 equals 1 minus the probability that it's none, right? That none are urban, which we just did in the previous example. So it's 1 minus the probability that none are urban. That's the 300 out of 478 to the 3rd power, right? And we already calculated that actually. So that is just going to be 0.75. That's 1 minus the 0.25, which gives me 0.75. Okay, so again, for at least one, I always say 1 minus the probability that it's none. And that means they'd have to be the other two categories, which were the suburban or rural, which we counted as 300 from before. These guys. Okay. I'll stop that video. Maybe I'll do one video per page.